A lot of the movements for social change, oftentimes movements start from the grassroots. They start with communities, They start with the people who are living the daily reality of whatever the reality is, whatever the cause is. But the nonprofit world has all of the issues that every other industry
and there's
has.
people working as well.
It's just human beings trying to collaborate. Having money doesn't equal changing the world. If you don't pay people properly, then you, by definition, you exclude a whole essential part of the population that should be working within these organizations because they're closest to the daily reality.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Yolk. I am Nat, as you all know, and today I'm here with Rachel. She is a phenomenal director at ID Advisors, nothing to do with Instagram. And she works in the charity sector, which is a sector that probably people in the creator economy or marketing or social media are not that familiar with. So before we chat about charity and actually how to make an impact or a meaningful impact, which is what you guys, I'm assuming, try to do. Let's know a little bit more about you, because probably my audience don't know you, because you're from a very, very, very different sector, but super interesting. Yeah. So we will start with your name and pronouns, your age, where you're from, and where you live, obviously, now in London, and one interesting fact about yourself, and how many languages do you speak?
Okay, if I can remember that. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Stephenson, chef, and I'm the managing director of IG Advisors. As you said, not Instagram. The IG stands for Impact and Growth. We can get more into that in a bit. Okay, my name, Rachel. I'm 30 years old. I live in London. I live about a 10-minute walk from here, which is great, in Shoreditch. So this was...
I'm also an East London person.
Exactly, so East London, Shoreditch, Bethnal Green area. I'm from Toronto, Canada originally. And interesting fact, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Gosh, that's a big question. It's like, what is interesting? I guess... so my career right now, which we'll talk about, is in the nonprofit and in the charity sector. But in a previous life, I studied musical theater. I did my BFA in drama from NYU. So about 10 years ago, I was in the theater world. And most people in my life don't know that about me now.
It's so funny because I am meeting people for the Yolk that are, people that I know of work, like yourself or friends and stuff. And they tell things about themselves. I go like, what? I had no idea about.
Most people don't know. I even forget. So I was studying musical theater.
What made you change into the? Is it okay to say non-profit sector or charity sector? That's all right.
Yeah, it's both. It's the same thing. In the States, they call it the non-profit. States and Canada. But in the UK, they call it charity sector. I prefer the word non-profit because I think charity has a
bit of a connotation.
Exactly. There's a bit of a power dynamic in that word that I don't particularly love. Yeah. So yes, I prefer nonprofit, but
I agree with that because obviously me coming from Spain, we don't really have that many words in Spanish to say NGOs or nonprofits or charity. But it's true that charity straight away, to me at least, evolves like takes you to is it missionary? Did you say
missionary?
That Catholic times and helping people. And to me, it may be completely wrong here, but it takes me a tiny bit to those times that may not be exactly what we want to do with a nonprofit.
100%. And I think it also evokes a sense of power, of like, if I'm giving to charity, I'm being charitable. It's like you're down there and I'm up here, and I think that's problematic. And there's sometimes pity. There's a lot of words associated connotations, yes. But in the UK, it's absolutely called the charity sector. And I think there's also power in reclaiming that word as well. And saying
like visibility,
Exactly. So, all the power to the people that love the word charity.
No, that's perfect. So whatever you want, guys, either charity or non-profit, I think we're comfortable with both.
Exactly.
And how many languages do you speak?
Oh, I'm ashamed to answer this question. So
the
real answer is that I'm only fluent in English. However, growing up, so in Canada, we learn French.
Of course.
And by age 14, 15, I was completely bilingual in French and in Spanish, actually.
There we go. Another thing I had no idea about.
I know. And my mom used to live in Cuba. We have family there. It was a thing. And then I don't practice it enough.
Right. That's ending today.
Exactly. You can have lunch in Spanish after this. But I'm rusty. I'm functional, but fluent would be, that would be an exaggeration.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you can speak English fluently, French and Spanish is a decent level. You're pretty much sorted from experience.
I can dabble. I could dabble in French and Spanish, but I'm, English is my main.
No, amazing. Great. So I always do these with everyone, just to break the ice, and also because I think it's important to know people not only related to what they do for work, but also about something that can be completely different to what they do. So I prepared 3 fireside questions. They're always super random.
Okay.
And first one would be, I know that this is quite a funny one because as a Canadian person, you'll be like, oh my God, there's 1,000 reasons. But give me 3 reasons why Canada is better than the UK or the US or both.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a controversial question. But since you asked directly, I will answer. Oh God. Okay, so compared to the US, I think one of the most obvious answers is just the social infrastructure we have. So we have healthcare, free healthcare. We don't have guns. We have
free healthcare, or paid with taxes, which is, we always say free, but it's actually not free, but it is
correct.
Free.
You're absolutely right. We have a good taxation system.
Same.
And I'm quite proud of that. I think that's really
100%.
important. So compared to the US on that front, I think that's a pretty non-controversial win for Canada. I would say as well that in Canada, when you are raised there, you are very aware of the world. We're very defined by what we are not. We sound like the States, but we're not American. Mm-hmm. And we have the Queen / maybe the King, who knows, on our money. Yeah. We're part of the monarchy. We're a former colony, but we're not the UK. And so our identity is very much in relation to other countries. Mm-hmm. We're very outward looking, whereas I think in the States, it's very introspective. There's the American dream. There's a lot of identity to do with the country itself that we don't necessarily have as Canada. And to be honest, there are pros and cons with that. There's also a huge trade-off on the negative side. But I think that I'm glad that I was raised to always be mindful that other countries exist and to understand who I was in relation to them. So I think
that's phenomenal, because that's a fight I always have with my boyfriend, who is half Irish, born in Jersey, but English from his mum's side. So a bit of a mix as well.
Yeah.
But he is very Anglo-centric. Yeah. Bless him, not consciously, but I think when you come from other countries, like both of us, you're a bit more aware of, you may not know where to place them on the map, or not all of them, but at least you're a bit conscious that your reality may not be someone else's reality. Yes. Which I think is very important.
100%. And then I guess the third one, okay, so this maybe is more in relation to the UK. I would say we do have a very good blend of the American directness, but the UK politeness.
Which is what you need.
In a powerful combination. So we're quite earnest, we're quite enthusiastic, which to some Brits really turns them off. But I think compared to an American, we're just a little bit more diplomatic in terms of our interpersonal relations, which is a very British thing, that
very useful as well in many occasions.
Exactly. So I'd say we're a very diplomatic, in the middle kind of country, which serves us well and also has the trade-offs. But
it's good.
Yes.
So now, after slagging off the UK, as my mum would say, honestly, this is all a joke. I love being here.
I know. I live here too. Exactly. I've lived here 6 years. It's amazing. It's an amazing place to live.
Absolutely. Yeah. So exactly, because we both love London. Yes. With the good and the bad. Yeah. What is your favourite restaurant in London? Because to people that have been living in London, although I know they're quite foodie or stuff, I sometimes ask this question from a pure selfish perspective, because I want to know more places, basically.
Yeah. Oh my God. There's so many good restaurants here. I think one of my favorite ones is actually just around the corner from here. It's called Tasfarin, and it's on Bethnal Green Road, just like a block or two from here, towards east. It's a Turkish restaurant. It's delicious. Oh my gosh. Vegetarian food, meat food, whatever you like. It has what you'd want. And it's cheap, cheerful.
That's what you expect.
Really quick. It's perfect. It's a great
Amazing.
It's a great place.
I always say we will link things as if it was like a YouTuber here, but we will link things.
Yeah, test for in.
And then my third question is, of course, you work in an industry that has a lot of myths around it. So do I.
Yeah.
So what would be a myth you would debunk from your sector or from, something that you've learned in life that you're like, no, this is literally, people think this, and this is completely wrong based on my experience?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there are so many myths about the nonprofit sector. I guess a lot of people assume that if you work in it, that it is immune from some of the problems of other sectors of the corporate world, in terms of just the people and the problems and the efficiencies and how organizations run and why people are doing it. Oh, you do it because you're a good person. But that's a really harmful myth, because it can lead to a lot of martyrdom and burnout, which is not helpful for the sector. But the nonprofit world has all of the issues that every other industry.
And there's people working as
it's
well.
just human beings trying to collaborate within it. A nonprofit is just a separate tax structure. It's a company. It's a company with a different kind of purpose and enshrined in its legal documents and in the way that it's set up. But it's still a business. It's still a bunch of human beings trying to work with each other towards a
people
common goal.
that may get on well, people that may get on not so well.
There are lots of issues, and a lot of controversies. There's a huge reckoning happening within the nonprofit sector, and the sector is very beautiful, but it's very broken at the same time. And I think when you don't work in it, you don't necessarily see that brokenness, but it's very real, and it affects everyone. It's a sector that impacts all of us, whether or not you work in it, because it's about our collective humanity and well-being as a society.
And people think that something that happens in certain country in the Middle East, let's say, may not affect your well-being in London, but it eventually does, because it's all 100%. Kind of like a domino effect, right?
100%, yes. So it is, whether or not you work in it, it's in all of our best interest to make sure that our nonprofit sector is thriving, because it is the backbone of society, especially in countries where the government isn't stepping up to take care of its people and of its environment, which I think we can say is many countries at the moment. So we need to protect it.
No, absolutely. So now that we've started obviously talking, I wanted to get this last question to link a bit with the actual work that you do. But I would love for you to share a bit more with us. What do you do? How you ended up here? Because something that I really wanted to do with the Yolk series was to inspire also youngsters. Youngsters, I look so old. Young youth. People, the youth. Students, people that maybe graduates, people that maybe are starting their professional career. Unfortunately, it's a very challenging time, I would say. It's a challenging time for us, 30-plus-year-old women, entrepreneurs, business people, etc., but it's probably even harder for people that are now trying to break out trying to find their feet.
Totally.
So something I wanted to do is to showcase different people from different sectors that I wouldn't say have made it, because that's such a old school term, but have got to a really good point in their careers that are doing something meaningful. And that could be inspiring. So tell us a bit more, how you started, how you decided to leave Toronto, how you decided to leave that music career, and end up being a managing director at IG Advisors. Again, not Instagram.
Yes, not Instagram. Oh gosh, great question. So rewinding. I always studied, I was very much in the arts world growing up. My mom worked in film, I grew up in that world. I went to an arts high school. I went to NYU Tisch School of the Arts. I did my BFA in drama at the new studio on Broadway, studying musical theater.
Here we go.
So that was fun. I know, God. Such a different lifetime ago, but it was a hell of a time. It was really fun. And I guess I learned pretty quickly, I would say, within my first year at NYU, that I knew I didn't want to do performing as a career. And I think how that came about for me was that I went into school, like most people do, saying, well, I don't want to be a starving artist, but I would like to be a successful artist. And I very quickly realized that the definition of success, of a successful artist, also wasn't what I wanted. Because you have very little control over your time, very unpredictable income, it just wasn't a lifestyle that my personality thrives in. No, I like predictability. I like structure. I started my first internship at the Met Opera in my second year.
I mean, this is very inspiring. Don't take this as a no.
Well, no. It was, I just applied, and they said, sure, summer interns were looking for an intern in development. I had no idea what the hell development meant. I thought that,
would have no idea.
I know, it's like, what does that mean? And I thought, developing opera? Sure, I don't even really like opera, to be honest.
But let's go for it.
Sorry about that, confession. But I thought, sure, great opportunity, I'll be developing operas. And I quickly realized on my first day that actually development means fundraising. It's a euphemism for fundraising. And
Is it good to use euphemisms for this?
Yes, I would say. And actually most, if not all, teams, departments who work on fundraising, they don't call themselves fundraising. It's mostly development, advancement, strategic partnerships, business development, transformational giving. It's all these words around it because fundraising, just like the word charity, has a lot of connotations, and it's not a term that donors, i.e. the people giving the resources, it's not a term that they want to hear. They don't resonate with it. So yes, I ended up by accident in a development department, not realizing that it was to do with fundraising. But I had the most amazing manager. Like she changed my life. Her name's Sarah, and we're still very good friends.
So many people are shouting out to our managers.
Yeah.
It's so nice to see. My experience, sadly, was the opposite.
Oh, no.
I didn't have a great manager not that long ago, but that made me set up the good egg.
Yeah.
So I think the role managers, and I know that a lot of people that are also managers will be probably listening or watching these.
Yeah.
You really have an impact, I think, on the people that you're line managing or not even directly line managing.
100%.
And this is the proof, and other people have come to Yolk have said the same thing.
100%.
And I have the same opinion. It could be from a good perspective or a bad perspective, but that champions you in different ways, I guess.
100%. Yeah, she changed my life. She was so generous with me, and we're still very good friends.
Amazing.
She's just the most fun. And I realized that the Met was filled with artists and performers who wanted more stability in their lifestyle. So I found my people in a different structure that I could thrive within. So yes, one job led to another. I was at the Met, and then I switched my focus from a performance major to a production major, like theater production, which I quickly realized was yet another euphemism for fundraising. That's so much of producing work and creativity, which is maybe relevant to the people you work with, is also about raising the funds to be able to do that and to sustain that and be resilient with that. So I just kind of by accident started to develop this expertise in fundraising. Then I graduated. That led to a job in fundraising. I worked at a place called Jazz at Lincoln Center in their development department. Again, I was a development associate. And I was also very motivated by sponsorship, visa sponsorship at that time in my life. I wanted to stay in New York. I didn't have a passport. So a lot of my motivation to stay in a full-time job came from, I want a company to sponsor me, so how do I make that happen? Long story short, I did have some visa problems, so I ended up having to leave New York, and that was very heartbreaking. However, what I did then was I traveled for a year, which was amazing. And I was a freelance grant writer at the time because I had built this expertise in fundraising, and grant writing is something that's actually, I'd say, quite a lucrative profession. It's a skill that's very in demand. Everyone hates doing it, and if you're good at it, it's a really nice way to kind of resource yourself as a freelancer. So I did that for a bit. I traveled, had a moment at age 24 trying to find myself in the world. And
as you do.
As you do. And I'm so grateful for that. And I met a lot of Brits on my travels, which brought me to London. And I came here for one weekend on my way home to Toronto, and loved the city, fell in love with the city, and was like, oh my God, this is like New York, but with Canadians in it. It's like the global infrastructure of New York, but with a culture that I actually was a lot closer to. And I thought maybe I should live here one day. Fast forward, I go on LinkedIn. I don't know anyone in the city. I find this company, IG Advisors, and their managing director at the time, a woman named Alicia Miranda, and I just reached out to her cold. And I said, oh, wow, your company looks interesting. I have a background in fundraising.
Hire me.
I want to work for you. Will you hire me? Can I take you for a coffee? And it turned into a job.
That's amazing.
That's
within a month. So cool, because I always tell, like, when people ask me, like, how do you manage to set up a company in a country that is not your own, with no funding, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, by doing it. Like, I know it's a very, very reductive answer, but it is. Like, one day I said, okay, so what do I need to do to set up my company in the UK? Have an LTD. Okay, phenomenal. How do you open an LTD? Blah, blah, blah. And I think it's like 12 quid or 20 quid. Or it's very, very little money. And then I just did it. Yeah. And that's actually what you need, in the same way that what you need to do is actually do it. Like, reach out to that person, send that email, send that DM.
And I got lucky, but I also believe in creating the conditions for luck to find you.
100%.
If you don't put yourself out there, nothing can happen. There's no guarantee that anything will happen, ever, but there is a guarantee it won't if you don't do your half of the bargain.
No, 100%.
So
we
you
say
gotta
in
do
Spanish that in Spain we have this lottery thing in Christmas, actually, on the 22nd. That is like a massive thing, and there's a massive award, or like cash money actually, that is called El Gordo, that means the fat, as you already know.
I do, porque hablo español.
Exactly, here we go. Very good, I do that. I know this. Anyway, so it's quite funny that people go like, I will never win the lottery. And it's quite funny saying that people say, is like, what, do you ever buy the ticket? Like,
yes, exactly.
Is that like, do you ever put yourself in that condition for that to happen, or you expect that those things to happen to you at your doorstep?
Yes.
I think luck, as Picasso would say, again, quoting my Spanishness here, but Picasso was Spanish. By the way, in case people don't know this, Picasso was from Malaga.
I did know that, actually.
So was Dalí, not from Malaga, from Caracas, like near Barcelona-ish. Don't kill
I've
me,
been to
Catalans.
the Picasso Museum. Yes.
There we go.
It's fabulous.
So Picasso was saying that the muses would have to catch you. I'm trying to translate that from Spanish. Catch you working. So las musas te tienen que pillar trabajando. Like, you have to be working on it to be caught by that inspiration. It's not going to just come to you if you're sitting doing nothing.
100%. I think we negotiate against ourselves so often. We don't put ourselves out there, and then the things don't find us. So sending that email to a stranger, a cold email in August. Who answers an email in August?
There you go.
And I got a job from it, and I moved here 6 years ago. I'm still at the company. Started as
an MD.
As an MD, I started as a junior advisor, worked my way up. 6 years later, I'm MD now, which is pretty cool.
Amazing.
So that's how I got to where I am, a little bit by accident, kind of falling into fundraising, not realizing what development meant. Oh, that means fundraising. And now, so you want me to explain what I do now?
No, I was gonna say that, like, we can chat, because obviously, we all know non-profit and NGOs and charities ish. But I remember the first time we met 3 or 4 years ago. God,
before COVID, whenever that
world was, like,
at the
3 years ago,
influencer marketing show.
Exactly. No, we met before, actually. I think
Kindred.
At Kindred. We can say it's all right.
Okay.
We met before, and through someone you knew, and Danny. Hopefully, Danny, you
shout out to
Daniel
us.
Exactly. And we met. I remember 3-4 years ago. I can't even remember. And I remember that that you came to the office and we were chatting. And I was like, I don't really know what to expect, because I was working in influencer marketing from a company that wanted to improve donations. Let's put it that way.
I remember.
I didn't know much about the charity sector. And we've done campaigns in the charity sector, and it's an industry or a sector that I would like to do more stuff in, both from a professional and personal perspective. But what is actually the non-profit sector? Like, tell us in literally 2 seconds. What? Or a minute.
Oh gosh. Okay, the non-profit sector. Well, it's a sector like any others. It's a different, so on a purely practical level, nonprofits are just organizations, but they have a different legal registration. So in the US, it's what's called a 501c3. registration.
Which I think is the same everywhere, right? They have different legal stuff.
Exactly, it's like a different code. But it's an organization like any other, and it means, at its most basic level, the clue's in the name, nonprofit, which means that any profits you generate as an organization have to be reinvested in the impact. So versus paid out to shareholders or as equity to...
Or dividends.
Exactly. So it's at a purely logistical level, it just means that profits, it's not for profit. It's the goal of it is not profit, the goal of it is impact. The nonprofit sector is extremely diverse. It's everything from the international NGOs that everyone's probably heard of, the Save the Children, the UNICEFs, the Oxfams, British Red Cross, all the big ones. And down, then there's the medium ones, like national organizations, kind of it's small, medium, and large. And then it goes down to the grassroots of organizations that aren't even registered as nonprofits or charities.
Right. Can you do that?
Oh, yes. And in fact, many of the most effective movement building groups are not, because maybe they're in a country where it's not safe for them to register, because then the government can find them more easily, or they don't have the same opportunities to do that, or it's a grassroots movement.
Or even the bureaucracy, I don't even know.
Yes, exactly.
Is right?
Yeah.
It's because it's like a French, loan, I think, is a very difficult word for me to pronounce.
Oh, yeah, of course.
All the admins that you have to do, all the admins may not be as easy to set up as is in the UK.
Oh,
Spain is horrific.
No, but even registering as a charity in the UK is hard.
Is it?
It's hard, it's expensive, it takes time. It's a very arduous process. And a lot of the movements for social change, whether that's anything from Me Too or Black Lives Matter or climate justice movements, looking at Greta and Fridays for Future or anything like that. Oftentimes movements start from the grassroots. They start with communities. They start with the people who are living the daily reality of whatever the theme
reality
is, reality is, whatever the cause is. And movements grow up, and they can sometimes grow into a nonprofit structure, but I believe that a healthy impact sector, nonprofit impact sector, is made up of all of those players. You need a really strong grassroots contingent, and you need bigger organizations with larger infrastructure, and you need them collaborating, and you need everyone to be well-resourced. So the nonprofit world isn't just big charities that you've heard of. It's also the movements you care about, and it's activism at its heart within different institutions.
Is it more, this is probably a very delicate question, and probably you wouldn't have an answer, but I like controversy, Meg.
Love it. Let's see.
Is it if I'm an organization or I'm a individual and I want to collaborate with a organization because certain topic is close to my heart and I want to support this in some shape or form, is it more useful for the actual users? Because I think that when people are using an organization or something, they call users, right?
So there are a lot of controversy there as well.
Okay.
I would say users
No,
I think that's more of a neutral term. The term that people use most often is a beneficiary.
Okay.
But that is, I would say, a problematic term that a lot of people are starting to not use.
Right.
So we can get into that.
Let's say users.
Say users.
For the sake of
service
this.
users.
Service users.
Users. Yeah.
Is it more useful to do it through a ginormous organization, let's say UNICEF, that is worldwide? Or is it more useful to work with local organizations that are a bit more hands-on in whatever?
You mean as a person who wants to contribute to the charity?
Yeah, exactly. What has more impact, I would say? It's a very difficult question.
It's a very difficult question. It's a great question, though. It's not controversial. Look, if I had to choose, it depends on how much, what you're looking to help. Are you looking to give them 20 quid? Are you looking to volunteer for a couple of days? Or are you, a high net worth individual going to give a, $50 million gift? There's a huge range of how you can help. I would say that what we need, what the sector needs is for all of those types of organizations to be well resourced. But of course, the smaller organizations, the more grassroots, the more local, they don't have
the resources.
Exactly, the luxury of as many resources. So I would say that's probably the better, if you had to choose between the two, that's probably the place where I would advise going. But of course, it depends on how you want to help.
And that's what you do, right? Because that's what you do at your job, advising, depending on how you are going to contribute, what's the best option?
Yes. So the easiest way to describe what we do, which is exactly that, is that we're a strategy consultancy. We work for social and environmental change. That's our mission. The way we do that is we collaborate with 3 core audiences in this nonprofit sector. So we have the philanthropy stream, that's individuals, families, foundations. We have a business stream where we work with companies. And then we have a nonprofit stream where we work directly with the charities, the nonprofits, and we do a variety of strategy services, etc. But so we do advise donors or people who have resources, whether that's their time, their money, their talent, their networks, connections. We advise them on how to best direct those towards an organization, or to translate resource into impact, because having money doesn't equal changing the world. There's
that's one of the
a lot of stuff happening in between
that I wanted to tap into, because I remember when we met, we were having this conversation, and that really stuck in my head. Like, okay, you may have, let's say, $100 million.
It doesn't mean anything.
That doesn't mean anything. Exactly. Those need to be, of course, I mean, take this with a grain of salt, but you need to maximize the impact that those 100 million have in the community that you want it to.
100%.
Because if not, if I'm assuming, right, if you donate this amount of money to someone, X organization that doesn't have the resources to administer that money, or to kind of allocate X amount of money to each of the parties or the communities or the people that are going to be using the users, I guess the impact is minimized. I'm assuming. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. I think there's 2 elements to that. So one, you're absolutely right. There's an absorption capacity question, which is, if you gave $100 million to a charity with a turnover of 20K, they would probably not know what the hell to do with it, which is, it's not their fault. That's very normal.
That's normal.
So a lot of donors, best practice in philanthropy would say that you shouldn't give more than 30% of an organization's turnover, in order to, because that will mean they have the capacity to thoughtfully absorb those resources, and so they don't become over dependent on any one donor.
Client.
Donor. Because then if they pull out, then
one client, donor in this case.
Exactly. So you want a diversified, healthy portfolio of many donors, so that you are resilient as an organization. So there's that piece.
That's so interesting.
The 30% figure is subjective, of course. That's not always true, but more or less that's what donors tend to follow. But then I think if you have resources, if you have significant resources, let's say the 100 million that we're talking about, that would be a very wealthy person.
I don't have them.
Yeah, I mean, neither do I. But even if you had 100 grand and you wanted to spend that on impact, then the thing that we help a lot of donors think through is the concept of systems change. So yes, you could just give that 100K straight to whatever charity. I don't know, UNICEF. Let's just one of the big ones. There's plenty of them. And that's fine. UNICEF does amazing work. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's better than doing nothing.
100%. There is nothing wrong with that. And if you want to be a strategic philanthropist, that means taking a systems view. So for example, let's say you care about homelessness, I don't know, or insert whatever cause here. You could give straight to a homelessness charity, and that's fantastic. You could also say, I have a lot of resources. I have £500,000 to give away. I'm going to do a bit of research to understand what is the system of this cause. What is causing people to experience homelessness in the first place? What are the preventative actions that need resourcing? What other donors are in the space? How well resourced is this space? What kind of interventions are most donors funding because they're sexier or more tangible? And where can I take a bigger risk as a philanthropist who cares about the system to invest in something that others aren't willing to? Can I fund research? Can I fund policy change? Can I fund advocacy? Can I fund a grassroots campaigning group that other donors don't want to fund because they're not registered?
Because I guess that people have in mind when we think about non-profit is straight away, kids that are hungry, people that are ill, and homelessness maybe, and maybe some environmental issues. That's probably like the top line that people have in mind, I'm assuming. But
it's so interesting. It's so much more.
Exactly.
It's so much more.
But I'm trying to think if we were, this is a very odd women thing to say for me, but it's like top of mind of words or sector or kind of issues that come to mind when talking about non-profits or donations. But I'm assuming that there's a whole range of issues that that you can support. And something that I wanted to chat about here is obviously from a creator economy perspective, right? It's a big debate around, okay, should not only creator economy, but marketing as a whole, should marketing be funded, just like so many words, funded by fundraising people.
But as in, should the charitable donations people give
exactly. So let's say that someone invests those 100 million. Should you guys advise a charity, if that's what you would do, that they spend some of that money, not just directly to help, whatever issue they're helping, whatever the community they're helping, but in marketing, so those donations can increase in the future? Because we had a request. We've done a few bits and bobs here with charities in Spain, but also we were going to do one in the UK. And the guys were so keen to pay influencers. And even myself, after so many years working in influencer marketing, I feel a bit of a guilt on that. What's your take on this? Because I guess this is a very, very, very open debate. Like, should we pay creators? Should we pay marketing people? Should we pay whoever involved in this marketing arena to promote charities? Or should these always be a pro bono thing?
Oh my gosh. 1000% yes to paying.
Okay, perfect.
With zero ambiguity. In my answer.
I'm not saying that I'm against that at all. I'm just opening the conversation.
But I think it's a very important conversation, and it gets to. So I know you're speaking about specifically marketing, and so I guess maybe your question is are you saying that this is about like if an influencer or something?
I would say, I think it has two ways to it. Like, one is, should we paying marketing with fundraising resources?
Yes, okay.
And that is a yes.
Yes, that is
because you want to have a good job, right?
But it's so much. It's so deep. And I could really get on a soapbox here, but it's a very, very, very important topic in the nonprofit sector, which is a lot of donors, more traditional donors, have an allergy to funding overheads, which includes marketing budgets, staff salaries, office costs, whatever, the overheads. Because in their brain, they've psychologically separated it into an overhead and an impact cost, a direct cost.
But that overhead may lead to impact.
You cannot have the
impact without the overheads.
They are inextricably linked. And it's a big, honestly, at this point, not even a debate. So more in the nonprofit sector, I'd say if you're a donor that still thinks that way, it's a bit embarrassing. If you're a significant donor, and if there's a whole thing, people working in the charity sector shouldn't get paid, high salaries. They should do it volunteering pro bono out of the goodness of their hearts.
It's a job.
It's a job. It's nonsense. B, that's a disaster for recruitment and retention, which is essential to running a healthy organization.
That's a good point.
And C, if you have low salaries, which this sector does,
so that's ours.
If you glamorize, then all you are doing is only attracting people from privileged backgrounds who can work in it, who either have a family or a partner subsidy.
Probably privileged, people from privileged backgrounds would not be that keen to come into its sector that it may be so far away as well from what they want to do.
A lot of them do, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's quite but it's if you don't pay people properly, then you, by definition, you exclude a whole essential part of the population that should be working within these organizations because they're closest to the daily reality. But it means you have someone with a husband who's an investment banker because it's the only way they can subsidize their life. It's a huge problem. So I am 1000% in favor of good, healthy overhead budgets, and for reframing the idea that there's a difference between an impact cost and an overhead cost. They are both impact. They are different mechanisms of impact, but they are both inextricably linked. And thinking in any other form is very archaic and very harmful.
No, so interesting. I mean, I completely agree with you. It was a very open question because I didn't want to be biased on these.
No, but I'm glad you asked it because so many people who don't work in it, they still have that. Oh, I hope my donation's going towards the people. And
it goes to the people, but it may go in different ways. Because, for example, if someone, going back to the creators, there's a lot of debate like, oh, we have this campaign, can the creators promote it? And yes and no. So something I had the chance to work with Public Health England. It's not a non-profit as such, but it was a charity campaign in this case.
Yeah, of course.
Years ago, before I set up the Good Egg, and they had a healthy budget for creators to raise awareness around cervix smear testing within different communities, including the trans community, trans men who still had the cervix, and other communities that may not be that comfortable sharing, medical kind of personal stuff with a doctor, who could be like the Muslim community, etc., etc. So some creators took the money, did a phenomenal job, and that was it. Some other creators decided to donate that money or to not take it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And, some colleagues were mentioning like, oh, look at this one, cheeky one's taking the money. And in my head I was like, oh God, I don't really know what to say to this, because I think that when you're a creator, you're doing a job. Like you are your own channel and stuff. And I don't think it's you may not take the same money to promote a charitable action, right?
Yeah.
That if you were doing an ad for Nike.
Yeah.
And I think that is the sweet spot.
Oh, for sure.
You may charge the minimum, like let's say, like this is what I need to function to get my photographer, my videographer, my whatever, and to do a properly good campaign on this, but I wouldn't take any profit myself.
Yeah.
I think that, in my opinion, is a good
I agree, and it's a very personal choice as well. And no shame to creators who take that money if they need it, because it's a job. It's just like any others. But I love that. I love that in the middle approach. But I think the key thing there is that charities need healthy marketing budgets in order to provide those opportunities in the first place. And that comes from donations from the public. It comes from us viewing our support to charities as investments, like any investor would for a business. You would never tell a business how to spend money. You would trust them.
But you guys have always eyes on you, I guess, not yourself, charities,
yes, our clients, but
money
exactly. But that's very harmful, and it's not correct. It's micromanaging. It demonstrates a lack of trust. It demonstrates power and control and ignorance. And if we are going to, if we're going to resource a nonprofit sector to solve the greatest challenges of our time, which is no small task, we have to trust them, which is the biggest task. We have to make sure the sector is well-resourced, resilient, sustainable, attracting the right kind of talent and retaining it. And we have to trust them. We cannot micromanage them. We have to give to them and then let them get on with their work. If there's too much donor control over how charities operate, it's
not great. It's micromanaging.
A disaster. Exactly.
Yeah. That's amazing. I think that is the take we can get from this chat. We could chat for hours, but I guess that's the take. Charities need to be well-funded, well-staffed, and well-resourced in a way, and being able to have autonomy, which I think is something 100%. Very important for people and organizations. Amazing. I hope that this has been useful, not only for people that work in the creator economy, because I guess that a lot of us receive requests on, charity campaigns, and of course we cannot take all of them. I would love to do more pro bono things, but we cannot take them all. Don't feel guilty if you are charging, I guess, for your services. Just be mindful and be conscious, I guess. I think it's all about balance and knowing where to sit.
Exactly.
And if not, Rachel's here. Reach out to her, because it would be phenomenal to solve questions. It's definitely an open debate. I think there's no such thing as black or white here.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Amazing. No, that's been super interesting. It's something that it's a topic that, as you know, that I'm personally quite interested in, and I think I want to educate myself more on it. But I think this is a start.
Yes.
Amazing. So to finalize this, I always asked my guests to tell me, how do they like their eggs? Because this is the yolk.
The yolk. Oh gosh. Well, I have to say, there's really only one answer to this for me, which is scrambled eggs. And I know you said
top one.
It's the top one. It's just the truth. I really don't like my eggs fried. That's the thing. I know.
I like eggs in all shape or form. So
no, I can't do a fried one. If it's crispy around the edges, it freaks me out.
Disagree on this.
I know. But scrambled eggs, I love scrambled eggs.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel. It was amazing to know more about a sector that is so scary sometimes to dip your toes into, but you know, it shouldn't be that scary, right?
Absolutely. It's a sector that we are all impacted by, whether we know it or not.
Amazing.
So it's worth knowing about.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and everyone listening to us.